These are the times when predators were absolutely disrespectful on To Catch a Predator. And this guy right here cooked up stories after stories, and one was creepier than the other.
I was going to tell him that, you know what, if you keep doing this, I mean, there's no other people like me, but there's other people that is kind of dangerous.
Riverside, California is known for its sweet and zesty oranges. But guess what else you'll find roaming the streets of this city? Some creepy and horny predators. And one such predator is Daniel Polito. Daniel chatted with a decoy who went by the name Sammy, and Sammy clearly made it a point to tell him that she was only 13. Despite knowing this, Daniel throws himself at Sammy, hoping for her to reciprocate his feelings. This guy was one of the more eager predators to have ever been on the show, and you'll soon know why. But first, a little background into this 40-year-old pervert. Daniel had chatted with the perverted justice team only to come to the sting house to get caught. While chatting, Polito didn't pull any punches when it came to what he expected from the decoy. The man right off the bat asked Sammy whether she wanted to watch him jerk off and whether her womanhood was all cozy and nice. This man clearly had no notion of personal boundaries. I mean, who the heck asks a 13-year-old such vulgar questions? After arriving at the house, Daniel eagerly waits as the decoy tells him that she'll be just out. However, to Daniel's surprise though, instead of the decoy, it is Hansen who shows up. Hansen swiftly walks in from behind the closed curtains, and all Daniel could do was smile. Can you believe that? This sicko clearly knew that he was busted, and despite that, he had the audacity to smile at Hansen. I can't say what must be running through his head at that point, but I can tell you that Daniel was as high as a kite. I mean, just take a look at him. Right from the very moment he stepped into the house, you can see that this guy was floating in some parallel world. And probably that's the only explanation we can give to his strange reaction on seeing Hansen. While most guys would be this guy couldn't help but laugh. But then I guess it's all the potty smoke that's making him giggle like that. But Hansen was not impressed. The TV presenter then asked him what he was up to that night, and Daniel gave such a casual answer that Hansen felt the need to correct him and push the question even further by asking this.
Nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Nothing or nothing good?
Nothing good.
Hansen must surely have a truckload of patience to tolerate such behavior. Had it been for me, I would have not thought twice before smacking that smirk off his face. Anyway, coming back to the bozo. Unlike other predators, Daniel did not even beat around the bush while answering Hansen. Without any hesitation, when Hansen asked him the reason behind his visit, the perv admitted that he was there to meet a girl from the internet who he thought was 14. This guy. But Daniel was trying to act smart. He was in fact trying to play the guardian angel. When asked whether he thought what he was doing was right, he bluntly said it wasn't. Well, what can I say about this guy? Despite being caught red-handed, he still had the audacity to say that none of it was right. So what the hell was he doing there in the first place? Obviously, all of us know that he was just trying to buy time while he figured an escape plan inside of his dirty head. But when Hansen kept pressing him to answer, Daniel pulled himself together just enough so that he could cook up a random story. To build the suspense, Daniel gave Hansen a little insight about the story he was gonna throw up and said that it was something crazy that nobody would believe. But Hansen was all ears. He insisted on hearing this story so that he could help Daniel clear his name. Well, that was all the hope that Daniel needed at this point, and so he started spilling some more beans. But sadly, none of it was true. Daniel first told Hansen that he had not planned to do anything vile that day, but instead, he came there only to lecture the girl on the dangers of the internet. Oh yeah, right. I so totally believe you, my man. But wait, the story doesn't end there, for he then added something even more obscene. He said that a similar incident had occurred to one of his young cousins. Apparently, one of his 16-year-old cousins was man that she met on the internet, and Daniel was only here to prevent something like that from happening with Sammy. Now at this point, I am not entirely sure if this incident did happen. If it did, then Daniel should have learned something good from it, like he claimed he did. But instead, he had chosen the wrong way for himself. But Hansen wasn't done listening. He then talked about this cousin's whereabouts, and this is when Daniel said something even crazier. When Hansen asked how old his cousin was, Daniel said,
She's dead. She's dead.
She's dead?
Yes.
She was killed?
Well, the first time that she got raped, she didn't get killed, but she got killed after that.
Wow, Daniel just shot the creepy factor of this story right through the roof. He then goes on about how it impacted him and what exactly had happened to this cousin of his. But what amazes me is that despite how brutal the story he narrated was, Daniel continues to stick to his story of being there to help the girl and not to have sex. I mean, this guy has some nerve to lie to Hansen's face like that. Later, when Hansen brought up the issue of him sending pictures to the young girl, Daniel fumbled to give a proper answer. Hansen then monologues the entire transcript of the chats between Daniel and the decoy. Now, it looks like the demented guy wasn't exactly expecting that, and from that moment, Daniel was at a loss for words and didn't talk much for the rest of the interview. When put on the spot, he finally blurted out saying that he had a stupid mistake. But this mistake cost him a period of 6 months in jail. But this next predator, who continued to chew gum throughout his interaction with Hansen, had quite the afternoon planned. While most predators bring gifts and chocolates, this one got 3 boxes of
What's your last name?
Are you the FBI or cops?
Following the demented Daniel is a 19-year-old called Richard Briault. He was caught on the same riverside sting as Daniel, but his story was even worse. Richard had made his way to the house after chatting with the decoy, whom he thought was 13 years old. For someone who was still so young, it doesn't come as a surprise that Richard had absolutely no patience.
It's up to you. Is there a doctor?
So, just like the other predators, Richard started to chat with the decoy going by the screen name Jackdoe12. Within a few minutes of entering the chat room and starting the conversation, Richard couldn't help himself but be straightforward about his intentions with the decoy. He first starts off by inquiring about the decoy's eyes, and then he wanted to know whether she was a virgin. He then goes into detail asking her whether she shaves her and whether she had engaged in banging the rear with her boyfriend. Well, it looks like this guy just can't contain himself. But Richard doesn't just stop there with his questions. As the conversation went on, Briault went into more and more details, asking whether she had done it and whether she'd be open to trying it. He asked the decoy if she enjoyed bobbing on the knob or whether she just liked the old style. After asking all of this, the 19-year-old then moves on to the sex position category. Like a 13-year-old would be aware of all that. In any case, why would you even bring it up? But just then, Richard drops another bomb. He talks about how this obsession where he had the itching need to have 13-year-old. He then added that it was his greatest fantasy and that he was glad that it was about to come true. Little did he know that fate had other plans for him. Soon after the conversation, Richard made his way to the Sting house, where he was confronted by Hansen.
Why don't you come on back over on this side, please? And bring your bag with you, if you would.
As soon as he saw Hansen, he understood that his life was now Richard was first asked to take a seat and then reveal what he had in the bag that he was carrying. Without a moment's delay, he pulls out this.
3 boxes of
Yep, you heard it. He had bought 3 boxes of with him. 3! This man had quite the evening planned ahead of him. As Hansen continued to question him further, something entirely different began to plague Richard's filthy head. Who was this well-suited man really? When he could not contain it any longer, he asked Hansen this.
Are you the FBI or cops?
Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
But Hansen, as always, didn't pay any heed to his questions and continued pushing Richard to explain himself. Richard was not sure who he was dealing with, but he knew he was in trouble. He nervously chewed his gum as Hansen persisted to put pressure on him. Soon enough, Richard just could not hold it back anymore and erupted by hurling out swear words in no particular direction.
Huh? Go ahead.
You had a bad...
But this didn't stop Hansen from continuing to ask questions. At this point, Richard realized that there was nowhere to run since he was already caught. He then, as an open confession, told Hansen this.
Done anything like that before in my life?
You've never done anything like this before.
I swear to God.
But how is this going to make anything better? While Richard tried to distract Hansen by starting to reveal details about his college life, Hansen tactfully brought him right into the topic. And what better than to reveal the chat logs at this stage? As Hansen read the explicit chat, Richard started to bawl while hearing it. He then tells Hansen that he was fully aware of what he had written in an attempt to get Hansen to stop reading from the manuscript. But that's exactly the point of reading it. And soon it dawns on him that he might just be kicked out from his house for this incident. And almost immediately he begins to whine and cry like a baby. Well, I'm sure Richard never thought about the consequences this lewd act might land him in. And so he tried every trick in the book to convince Hansen that he was innocent. He even added that he had a bad feeling about it all the way, even before he made it to the house, like as if that excuse was gonna score him some points. But when Richard understood none of his dramatic display of emotion was working, he tried to threaten Hansen by saying this.
Alright, I'm gonna go home and find a gun, shoot myself in the head. So stupid.
Well, none of this would have happened if he had a better conscience. But it looks like Richard wasn't aware that no matter how much he tried to stall his exit from the house, the cops would anyway wait to arrest him. While Richard resorted to crying, this next predator who was supposed to protect the public preyed on them instead.
You thought, what was this? What?
Like a sting, man.
A sting.
Michael Laylot was clearly into young chicks. Right from the start of his conversation with a 14-year-old decoy, he made it clear that he was into young blood. When the decoy told him that she had to lie to post the ad, but she was actually 14 turning 15, this statement sort of turned him on. After the decoy shares a few cheesy photos with him, Michael gets all too excited to meet her in person. In haste, Michael arrived at the motel, thinking he was gonna get some hardcore action, but this is what happened instead.
Sure, come here. Come on, what we see? Relax. Hey, just relax, buddy. You're good. Just relax. Okay, lay down right here. Lay down right here.
The cops immediately cuff him and check his pockets for any dangerous weapon, and then take him to another room. This is where Hansen walks in to ask this silly man some obvious questions. But what's surprising is that this man already knew that this whole thing was a sting operation. His reasoning to that was because the ad said that she was 19, but we all know what her real age was. But what gets me is that if he already knew that this whole thing was a trap, why did he even come here?
Well, I was gonna see how old she actually was. If she was, I was gonna ask her for proof when I got here.
What a load of rubbish. He went on to say that he was going to check her license and see if she was actually 15. And if she was, he was going to bounce. Michael coming here was not the main objective apparently. This was just a side quest for him as he was on his way to Home Depot to buy some paint for his house. That's some to-do list, isn't it? Probably I forgot to mention that he was a prison guard. Yep, that's right. He knew the laws. And if you can't tell the difference between the right and wrong after watching inmates day in and day out behind bars, then I don't even know what to say. Now, this chap seemed to have a clean history. He had no criminal record and apparently did not have sex with a minor before. He then goes ahead and does this. When Hansen asked him for one solid reason to believe him, and Michael said,
Sure, I really don't know.
Knowing that the girl was only 14 years old, Hansen was appalled to read the chat logs of what Michael wanted to do with her. It started with this.
You say, I want to eat your.
And then came another one that said,
You say, I want to you hard.
And Michael's response with every minute was growing creepier and creepier. This.
See what she would say back, or response back is feel like, I don't know, feel like her responses to see if what her responses would be.
What her responses would be.
Yeah, because I didn't.
Lot, however, tries to escape by saying that he had learned his lessons and that he would never do it again. But when Hansen confronts him about why he came to meet the decoy, he said that she didn't look 15, and so he simply wanted to check and report her to the cops. But Hansen had heard these excuses 100 times already. And once the cameras come out, when Hansen asks Michael if he should be jailed, he outright says no. And what was his reason for saying this? Because he had never done this before. One more blatant lie from an absolute unforgivable jerk. But this next predator from Fortson, Georgia was so arrogant that he tried to push Hansen under the bus.
What was your plan here today?
I can't answer that.
On one peaceful Saturday afternoon, there was a predator coming over to be a good Samaritan. Oh, just cut the crap. Like as if. But that's what 22-year-old Matthew Cogburn expected everyone to believe. The young man was all riled up when he realized that he would soon be banging a blondie. Oh, this is exactly what he had been looking forward to for the longest of times. But little did he know that the decoy who pulled the entire sting off actually had a wig on. Well, of course Matthew had no idea. As soon as he arrived at the house, he was asked to wait while the fake blondie put her laundry away. Now that's all the cue you need for what was about to happen next. And just as Matthew was stretching and preparing himself for one hell of a night, this is what happens.
Sit there and get comfortable for that.
I had a feeling this was going to happen.
You had a feeling what was going to happen.
Okay, here's what I don't get. Most of these perverts say this, which means they know they might run into trouble someday, and yet it's not enough to deter them from giving into their vile temptations. But Matthew was one notch higher. He not only recognized Hansen, but also told him that he knew what all this was about. In a faint voice, he said,
No, we're doing 13 or NBC.
NBC?
Yeah.
You mean like Dateline NBC?
Yeah, I could hardly make that out either. Which makes me wonder, is this the same guy who only a few minutes into chatting asked the decoy if she wanted to and how she felt about He went an extra mile by making sure she had birth control. If not, he even offered to bring Well, when Hansen asked him to explain his presence, what Matthew replied will leave you in shock.
You look at his MySpace page. His hero is God. His motto is Jesus rocks.
Right from the start, Matthew wanted to scoot away, and that's exactly what he did as soon as the men with cameras zoomed in on him. The cops had to literally chase him down before he got away too far. Yeah, this is why I'm covering more and more predators each week, so that none of them can get away with it. And if you two believe that we need to bring these guys up ahead and chastise them for their disgusting actions, then all you have to do is leave me a like, guys, and I'll take care of the rest for you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because I got a ton more from where this came from. Matthew did something unexpected during the interrogation at the police headquarters. He tried to put Hansen in a tight spot. Matthew thought he made a ballsy move by accusing Hansen for trying to pin him down. But well, by now, even the cops knew that this guy was full of shit. From there on, things get really graphic as the cops further take a deep dive into the dark side of this disgusting predator. But we all know he's not the first and won't be the last to harbor such crassy intentions. So these were the predators who were highly disrespectful towards Hansen, the decoy, and the society in general. If you ask me, I want nothing but the worst for these pedophiles who roam at large amidst our community. But is there a better way to nab them? This had certainly got me thinking. I'm gonna take off for now. As for you, thanks for watching, guys.